The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's November 21st. It is the day that MLS clubs have to notify the league office of their intention on picking up an option on players who are going into an option year. There's going to be some news around the league today. We've had a handful of teams make their proclamations about these options. We've had more than half not say anything yet. We've had quite a few trades around the league, and we'll recap that here in the first segment of the show. Felipe Cardenas will be joining us to share his thoughts on a Thursday about some of those trades, about where teams are positioned right now after the expansion draft. And we're also going to look at Saturday's Copa Libertadores final between River Plate and Flamengo, because there are rumors about River Plate key figures potentially being part of MLS in the future, maybe in the very near future. Figures like Marcelo Gallardo, figures like Juan Fernando Quintero. That's not Felipe calling now. He's calling in at 9:30. Maybe he's a little excited. But we'll be getting into all that this morning as we go. Jason Longshore, John Nelson with you this morning. And, John, let's get caught up on all the deals around the league, because there were quite a few yesterday. The off-the-field stuff first. So Claudio Reyna leaving New York City to become the first sporting director of Austin FC. That announcement is expected to become official this morning. Reyna launched NYC. He's been there from day one. But now you have Anthony Precourt in Texas, where he was trying to get to and fighting tooth and nail to get to where he wanted to be. And he's going to have a team that starts in 2021 with a manager in Josh Wolf, with a sporting director in Claudio Reyna, in place on November 21st, 2019. Outside of Atlanta hiring Darren Eales as early as they did, this has got to be one of the most advanced launches of a team in MLS history.
Yeah, and I was trying to think back about advanced hirings and things like that. And this gives you a really big runway and lets you get everything squared away the way that you want to. And you've got guys who, if I'm not mistaken, were national team teammates at one point, yeah?
Yeah, in the 2002 World Cup.
So, there's obviously the relationships go back that far, but what you have now is you've got two guys with a long runway, and now I want to see the approach that they have in trying to build what's going to be going on down there in Austin. So when I saw this, I was like, okay. A lot of things had pointed to it a couple days beforehand, but now that it's here, all right, you got your two guys. I want to see what your philosophy is, and I want to see what you're trying to build, and obviously you can figure out guys that you want to bring in for that season and work things out with USL franchises and things like that and get things squared away with that. But no, I'm looking forward to seeing where this relationship goes with the long runway that you've given yourself.
I mean, the relationship, I think, will be fine. I want to see what they do in the upcoming transfer window. I want to see if they go make some moves in January to start building. I want to see what they do next summer. They're doing everything early, which is good and should give you more time to prepare. And you're also bringing in a sporting director who just launched a team and has been successful at it. I mean, New York City has been a Supporter Shield contender multiple years. They've had to navigate changing coaches. They've had to navigate a lot of different things that will help him when they get to Austin and the process that they'll have. I think in some ways it'll be easier in Austin, and in some ways it'll be more difficult because you don't have the City Football Group umbrella to work under. You don't have, scouting departments that you can lean on. You don't have different things that you can lean on. So the experience will be helpful, but now it's Claudio Reyna leading a team on its own from scratch. Be pretty exciting to see. The other off-the-field news was MLS All-Stars versus Liga MX All-Stars next July at the Bank of California Stadium. Awesome, awesome, awesome idea, and I think this one will capture the attention of everybody because it's unique. You know, I mean, you think to other all-star games around the country and other sports, you don't have anything like this. You think to other all-star formats that MLS has done, nothing has been this compelling because, yeah, it's exciting when you get Barcelona or Manchester United or Real Madrid or a big club like that involved. It's still an awkward friendly at that point. This isn't going to be that friendly. This is going to not be exactly like USA-Mexico at the national team level, but there will be some of that carryover. And on the Mexican side of it, this is something that maybe a handful of special occasions they've pulled together a Liga MX best 11 for a special match, a charity match, a fundraiser, something like that. Maybe, but never in this type of situation. It's a game changer. It's a really exciting thing, and I think around the world, this is going to resonate more than anything else MLS has done in an all-star format. This is going to get people's attention. This is going to be exciting.
Yesterday, as I was going through social media, I was already seeing people looking at possible mock starting 11s and 18s for the Liga MX side. And the genuine, just organic excitement. It's like, okay, who could they be facing? It could be, this guy, this guy, this guy, this grouping, this grouping, this grouping. And the overall excitement for something like this, does this mean that we're going to be in Los Angeles now?
I mean, that's easy for you to say. Like, there's a thing called a plane ticket and thing called hotel, and I'd rather not sleep on the beach. So
no.
I mean, we're selling some scarves and some shirts and stuff, but we're not selling that many just yet.
But no, just the genuine excitement and the buzz that was generated instantaneously. I thought it was really cool, and this is a bragging rights thing. And for me, I'm looking forward to seeing now what the rosters are going to look like from the Liga MX side and how it's going to play out there. First All-Star game in LA in a really long time.
All right, trades. So here's the rundown. Colorado added 2 center backs. They added Lalas Abubakar from Columbus. They had him on loan for the season. They ended up giving Columbus $400,000 in 2020 general allocation money and a 2020 international roster spot. That's a lot less than people were talking about maybe a month ago. It was kind of funny that yesterday on Stoppage Time we were talking about this and the rumors around Abubakar. I always thought those numbers were crazy high. I mean, people were talking like over $1 million in allocation money to get a deal done for Abubakar, and I think he's been a promising player, and I think he had a good year for Colorado, but he wasn't worth that. This is the kind of range that makes sense. And Colorado sent more to Philadelphia to bring in Austin Trusty. $300,000 in GAM in 21, $300,000 in TAM in 20, an additional $150,000 in GAM in 21 if there are certain performance metrics that are hit. In addition, if Colorado sells Trusty abroad, the Union would get a cut of the transfer fee, 30% before the end of 21, 25% after that. You subtract out the allocation money from that cut, and there you go. So, Ernst Tanner talked about the deal with Trusty, and things got weird with Trusty in Philadelphia. At the end, he wasn't factoring in. There were comments about Trusty saying, like, well, once you really know what's going on, they were negotiating a new deal, and sounds like things fell apart, and it sounds like Philadelphia might have tried to make a move last summer in the window and couldn't do it. Tanner said that there was no European interest currently for Trusty, and the fact that he only had 1 more year on his contract hindered that, and it sounds like they couldn't add more years to the deal. They couldn't find a number that made sense. the Rapids made the best domestic offer, and Philadelphia took it, and they still get that percentage if he is sold abroad. So Colorado has laid out $700,000 in allocation money in 20, an extra $300,000 in 21, an international slot, potentially an extra $150,000 in GAM if Trusty plays really well, to get two young center backs that could, if they keep them for a while, I mean, they could be together for 10 years, or both could develop into players that are eventually sold. It feels like a new day for the Colorado Rapids.
I was going to ask with the locking in of Abubakar and the addition of Trusty, how does the back line look now?
Well, those two are going to start.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like around them and defensively, how is Colorado looking?
It's so early. I mean, yeah, I could look at their roster and pick out guys, and those guys might not be on the roster later today or tomorrow or by the start of training camp, or they could add new faces. So it's too early for that type of talk. Everything's too in flux. But you have two center backs that you can build around for a long time or potentially sell and bring in a profit if they play well. So you're in a good spot if you're Colorado. I'm not talking about that as a new day for Colorado. I'm talking about just the fact that they're aggressive and going out
Yes.
and making a deal. That's good. Yes, it's allocation money. Yes, it is MLS money. It's still making a big deal and putting out a pretty big outlay for two guys who have developed in this league. And that's the other key to it, is you're not talking about going out and signing a guy on TAM from whatever league around the world. You're talking about two guys that have made their name in this league. Abubakar through the college draft, Trusty through the Philadelphia Academy. That's a really good thing for the league. It's a good thing for Colorado. I think Colorado Rapids fans should be excited about it. Other trades, Montreal traded Victor Cabrera, center back, plus $100,000 in 2020 GAM to the Houston Dynamo for winger Romel Kyoto. There's been all kinds of rumors about Kyoto and Houston and it not working out and him not being a good fit and issues, and now you get to start fresh. You added Darwin Quintero. You move Kyoto on. You pick up a center back in Victor Cabrera that I've always liked in this league. He's a little reckless at times. You're going to get some cards. You're going to get some fouls in bad spots, but he's a guy who can step in and start for this team. It's a good move for the Dynamo, and it could be a good move for Montreal as they start fresh under Thierry Henry if Kyoto lives up to the potential that I think we've always felt like he had. Can he truly get there and make this worth it? If he does, it's a win-win for both.
And how long is the alleged Nacho Piatti, the remainder of his time in Montreal?
It's so up in the air. I don't know. I mean, I've seen rumors that it's for the year. I've seen rumors that he's got 6 months left on his contract. And there's also been talk that he doesn't come back, period. So wait and see, and that's going to be one where you would expect Henry and Piatti to sit down and talk about expectations and roles and what that looks like. I don't think you're bringing in Kyoto necessarily as a replacement. I think you're bringing in Kyoto because you're getting him for a guy that you've been shopping. There's been rumors about Cabrera on the move for a while, and you're getting a guy with a lot of upside, and you're not giving up anything that you were holding valuable because you were trying to move Cabrera anyway. You gave up an extra $100,000. That's not too bad to get a guy who, at his best, is a game changer in this league. So it feels like a win-win if Kyoto lives up to that potential, and maybe a change of scenery does him good.
And that's what I was thinking as well. That with how things had kind of just stagnated in Houston. Always you look at the change of scenery, but not knowing how long Piatti was going to be there, however long or however short, if at all, if there was going to be some blending of that, just to see how that relationship may be for however short term that was possible. So that was why I was asking about Nacho Piatti, just the possibility of, even if a short term thing, just to see how that change of pace would work for Kyoto possibly.
Romel Kyoto's no Nacho Piatti. So, I mean, he's going to be a complement to that if Piatti's there, and if not, then you're going to replace Nacho Piatti. It's not a like for like at all. Portland announced a signing 27-year-old defender Dario Zuparic from Croatia's First Football League side, HNK Rijeka. That is where Eber came from. Multi-year contract using TAM, so he is above a $530,000 salary or salary plus whatever transfer fee was necessary. Zuparic also played in Italy with Pescara. A little bit of Serie A experience, mostly Serie B. Veteran center back, and that was a spot that Portland struggled with last year. It feels like Savarese finally gets that upgrade that, honestly, I feel like he was looking for from the end of the 2018 season. Just a year late, but it'll help the Timbers be a better team next year.
And, with when it comes to Zuparic, when you mentioned Hebert, I was like, okay, now that's where I remembered hearing H&K Rijeka. So, you find success. One team finds success there. You want to kick the tires on a place like that, and you come up with Zuparic. And so now I want to see how he integrates with Portland when it comes to how he gets adjusted to life in MLS and what they're looking for when it comes to how they want to use him there in Portland.
So today, 3 o'clock is the deadline on contract options and word being given to the league, yay, nay, on players going into an option year. Frank de Boer and Carlos Bocanegra will be speaking to the media via conference call at 3 o'clock. Make sure you're following your favorite SDH All-Stars for their tweets about it, because there will be quite a few, I would assume. The players that we expect to be discussed in that regard are Julian Gressel, Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez, Florentine Pogba, and possibly Tito Villalba. I think Doug had a while back that he was going into an option year, but I haven't seen any other conversation about that. Gressel and Leandro Gonzalez-Pirez have both talked about it, and Doug has also validated that. And Pogba, same thing. It was thought that he was signed on a 1-year deal with an option. So those are the 4 that we know about. Other guys who are out of contract could be discussed as well, and the only 2 that we've seen anything from the players themselves are Jose Hernandez and Mikey Ambrose, both posting goodbye messages on social media, which would make you think that either they are out of contract and will not be signing a new one in Atlanta, or had an option that was not picked up. So that's where you're at right now. You've only had a couple of teams make announcements. You had a few more yesterday. We talked about Medunjanin and Marco Fabian not coming back to Philadelphia. There's going to be a lot today, and I would expect that we'll get some that pop up during the show as teams make public announcements of these decisions before that deadline. I'll be curious to see 2 things. Any surprises in this regard, because there always are some, because we don't know the option terms on deals, and sometimes you might see like, oh, wow, why didn't he pick up the option on that player? One, they might still be negotiating a new deal because they didn't like the option number, or the team thought it was too high and didn't want to commit to it, whatever. Or 2, trades. And I think some of the trades we've seen are guys who are going into option years, and the club that they were at didn't want to pick up the option or didn't want to sign them to a long-term deal and say, well, let's get the best we can for them now. And the other club says, yeah, we'll pick up that option. We'll take that. I think you could see a few more trades. Quite a few yesterday. There's definitely potential for more ahead of that deadline. Tomorrow is when you'll get lists of players who are available for the waiver process and the reentry process. Waiver process, basically think about it this way, and when the list comes out, we'll go through it a little more in detail. The waiver process is for players who haven't been in the league very long at all, like a year or 2 that are out of contract. The reentry process is for guys who are older, have been in the league for 2, 3 years, 2 if they're older players age-wise, 3 if they're younger players, and they don't qualify for free agency. Free agency, it's a kind of a high bar right now, and this is something I would expect to change in the CBA. 28 years old and 8 years of service in the league. So if you don't meet that, but you meet the minimum threshold, which I think it's like 23 and 3 years or younger and 2 years in the league, if you don't meet that, you go to waiver. Everything else goes to reentry. And both are draft-like processes. So that's what's coming next. But today could be a eventful day around the league.
And like I said, I want to see how the lists come out. I'm right there with you. And is it time for Thursdays with Felipe?
At 9:30 it is.
Oh, 9:30. Okay, sorry. I was thinking 9:20. Sorry. 10 minutes ahead. Never mind.
Okay.
Sorry. My clock was a little forward. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes things get written wrong on the notes. But Felipe will join us here in just a minute.
It's all right. But no, I want to see the list come out, and I want to see what they look like. And once again, you're looking at, okay, who wants to take a look at who's on that list, who sees a property, and who sees an athlete that they want to take a flyer on, and then figuring that out. So it is the next step in a very long process. That's going to
you have the contract deadline day tracker on MLS soccer that goes up a few minutes ago. That's where you're at. So,
oh wow.
It's not that big of a deal. Settle down. It doesn't deserve an oh wow. It's just a way to track what's going on. So, for example, Chicago. You've got 2 goalkeepers under contract. You've got 5 defenders. You've got 7 midfielders. So you've got 14 guys under contract. 11 guys were already under contract going into the year 2020. 3 contract options were exercised. Fabian Erbers, Jeremiah Guchar, and Michael Azira. They don't have listed contract options not exercised for Chicago yet. Cincinnati, for example, made all of their announcements, so you have a full rundown of the 16 players that are under contract, which you would expect for a team that's going into year 2 of their existence. Nazmi Al-Badawi, out of contract. He's going back to North Carolina FC, where he was loaned to, and that deal was already pretty much done. Cincinnati had said, we're loaning him here, and he's going to run out his contract here, and I think he already agreed to a new deal with North Carolina. Contract options exercise, they picked up 8. They didn't exercise 6, but 2 players that they did not pick up the options on, Emmanuel Ledesma, Jimmy McLaughlin, they are negotiating with those players currently. Derek Etienne, they let the loan expire, so he goes back to the Red Bulls. Columbus has made their announcements, some of them anyway, and this is where it gets tricky. So you look at Columbus, for example, out of contract, Ricardo Clark, veteran central midfielder, Federico Higuain coming off an injury, Romario Williams, former Atlanta United forward. They're out of contract. Contract options not exercised. Ben Lundgaard, Alex Croniale, David Guzman, Edward Apoku, Eduardo Sosa. Contract options undecided, so they have not said what they're going to do yet with Connor Maloney, with Jordan Hamilton. Those are 2 guys who could be available. Maloney would be one that if he is available I think he might actually go through waiver. I'll have to look at how many years he's been in the league. He would be one who I think will move. He'll be one that I think gets picked up somewhere. A versatile outside back. You always need those guys. This is going to be interesting. Go ahead.
I was going to say, can we look at Seattle for a second?
Yes, because they have made their announcements. Seattle Sounders, let's work on the out-of-contract and not exercised options first. So, out of contract, Kim Keehee, Harry Shipp, Brad Smith. Smith was on loan from Bournemouth. There's talk that they might try to renegotiate another loan. Kim Keehee is out of contract and would not be a free agent. Harry Shipp, I think, is a free agent. I think he does meet the threshold for it. Let me double-check that. Because Shipp is a guy who will be playing somewhere. I think he'll be in demand. No, not a free agent. Only 6 years in the league. Man, it feels like Harry Shipp's been around for a long time. So he would go through re-entry if he doesn't get re-signed by Seattle. And they have not said they're negotiating. So right now, he's headed into the re-entry process.
And then
contract
the not
options
exercised.
not exercised. Yeah. Saad Abdul-Salam, Jonathan Campbell, Victor Rodriguez, Alex Roldan, Luis Silva, Roman Torres. Which one did you want to talk about? You seem like you're anxious about one.
I looked at the out of contract and you went through that and you see Kim, Shipp, and Smith, and then you look at Saad Abdul-Salam, who can't seem to find a home.
Yeah, didn't play much.
Kansas City, New York, and Seattle, and then you look at Roman Torres, and I look at age when it comes to Torres and what he went through this past year. But no, the out-of-contract guys is what kind of set off a flare for me for Seattle.
Set off a flare? In what way?
Just, okay, with a guy like Harry Shipp, with a guy like Brad Smith, would you want to kick the tires on somebody like that? If they work their way through the re-entries and the waiver drafts,
Harry Shipp will go through re-entry and he'll end up somewhere. I mean,
yeah.
You do have to remember Harry Shipp's a guy who, in the last 3 years in Seattle, has started 41 games. He's a guy who's turned into a bit of a super sub spot starter. I think he can be a starter for somebody. I was really impressed with his time with Chicago in 14 and 15. It's also a long time ago. So 5 goals, 3 assists in 1,300 minutes this year. Good return for Seattle, but can he do more somewhere else, or is he just going to be that guy off the bench providing depth as a winger or a 10? I'll be curious to see if a team tries to get more out of him. Kim Keehee was a player who really wasn't impressive early on, had a good year. I'm a little surprised that they let the contract run down, but he's also a guy that at the beginning of this season, I don't know if I would have tried to sign him to a new deal either. And now he'll have the freedom to go where he wants outside of the league, and that might be what he's ultimately looking for. If he wants to stay in the league, you're talking about the waiver process for him, I believe, because he's only been here for a couple of years. Seattle will have to go out and get a center back. Xavier Arriaga is the only center back they have under contract at the moment. We'll get into more of that as announcements come. There will be plenty today. But first, we're going to take a break and get Felipe Cardenas on the line, talk about all the moves around MLS, but also get ready for the Copa Libertadores final on Saturday. Hang out with us. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, November 21st. It's a Thursday. Most Thursdays, we get this man to join us, Felipe Cardenas of The Athletic. What's up, Felipe?
Good morning, guys. How are you guys?
All right.
How about you?
I'm doing well. Getting ready for not just deadline day, getting ready for the holidays, man. I'm ready.
How are you on your shopping?
I'm way behind. I'm a last-minute guy, but I get it done.
So Amazon and FedEx are your best friends this time of year?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it takes a lot for me to step into a mall for Christmas shopping. I'm all about the
desperation,
courier service,
the mall activity.
Yeah. If I don't have to go to a mall, I won't do it.
Let's start with another team that is leaving their shopping late. Inter Miami. You had a great piece over at The Athletic about what the coaching profile looks like from everything we've heard, and now we're hearing that basically there's a shadow coach that had input on the expansion draft and is ready to be announced, and we'll all know who he is, but it hasn't been announced yet.
It has not, and they don't. You know, the top end, the front office doesn't seem too concerned. They're pretty confident that they have their guy. And I think if you go back to, when was that? Earlier in the summer. That's where I started my research, just with the criteria that was established by Jorge Mas and the club about the type of manager that they were going to get, and they were very open about the fact that this was going to be a big-time manager, a manager that everyone would know about, a manager that has both played and coached, but especially coached recently at the highest levels. And so I think immediately right there, you know that makes the hire a lot different from most MLS hires, right? I mean, they're going after somebody that's not coming off of, for what we know, like a failure, right? Like they're not looking for a job. They're not being shopped by their agent because they need kind of to kickstart their career, like has happened with a lot of managers, including, Tata Martino. Tata Martino wasn't that he was desperate for a job. He was desperate for a different job. But he was coming off of, the back-to-back disappointments at Copa America with Argentina, that had followed the disappointing spell at Barcelona. Frank de Boer as well, coming into Atlanta United, a big name coach, obviously, but after two spells, both in Serie A with Inter and the Premier League with Crystal Palace, that just did not go well at all. And now you see Thierry Henry as well coming to Montreal after the big debacle at Monaco. So Inter Miami is taking a different route, which is to me the most interesting one, because if we're expecting the coach to be someone that can probably choose his next job, and if it is in fact the favorite, which looks like Marcelo Gallardo, but again, I told you via DM, Jason, that I've personally heard conflicting reports about whether he is the guy. So we're going to have to wait and see. But Marcelo Gallardo, for me, it fits. He checks a lot of boxes because if you go back to his playing career, people forget. Yeah, he played at DC United, but he did play for both Monaco and PSG. Played on probably, arguably, the best River Plate sides of all time. Was key in a midfielder in the 96 Copa Libertadores victory. He didn't play in that match, but he was kind of through one of the young guys and continued and played for Argentina at World Cups. And then obviously he's coming from, he's the most successful manager in River Plate history. River Plate's been playing soccer for over 100 years. So that makes him a huge hire if they can land him, because, he's linked to Barcelona. Today, Rivaldo, the ex-Brazilian attacker and Barcelona legend, comes out and says Marcelo's ready. He's ready to manage this team. Speaking about Barcelona, you've got guys in Argentina, ex-managers, ex-players. Claudio Borghi, who's a Chilean-Argentine legend, has been a manager and a player in the Argentine first division. He's gone on record saying, I have been told. And I'm quoting him, I have been told by a source that he's going to Barcelona. Gallardo is going to Barcelona in December. So it's just exciting. It's cool to see a club in MLS linked to that caliber manager and the way that they want to play at Inter Miami, it would make a lot of sense.
So when you look at how Nashville and Inter Miami did on their draft day for expansion, how do you think that both of those sides did in building who they want to be?
I mean, I thought you saw different builds, obviously. It was somewhat underwhelming. I mean, it's an expansion draft. It's not, there weren't like a lot of huge surprises. But to your point, John, I think you did see two clubs that are kind of going about it in different ways. Like one of my editors tweeted, which I thought was interesting. He was like, one of the most interesting things about the expansion draft is like just the way both clubs are kind of celebrating it. Like Nashville, it looked like an NFL type of draft situation, right? Like the party, the fans were there. You've got the board members or like the big wigs in their nice, blazers, and they're at the table and they're on the phone and they're coming up and they got celebrities reading the cards, and it's just like, that was their thing. And then Miami is just like Paul McDonough's like, yeah, we're taking Ben Sweat. it's just like a totally different like vibe, And then McDonough's like, yeah, he's kind of like rubbing his wedding ring, our next pick is this guy, and this is why we're doing it. Next, like get me out of the spotlight. So it was fun to see that, like the two clubs excited to be in MLS, but. I thought like you start with Miami, just taking Lee Nguyen to me is like is a way of saying, hey, we want attackers, we want guys, technical midfielders, technical players around the pitch that can keep the ball, that are creative, and start to fit with the players that they already have, including the young Argentines. And the players that they're going to bring in, like the big time DPs, are going to want guys that are good on the ball. And so I thought you saw that. Even Ben Sweat, who he's a good left back. I don't think he's not a world beater. He has 2 caps, I think, with the U.S. men's national team. I remember one of those caps was against Colombia. He was pretty exposed, but a lot of guys were exposed in that game down in Tampa, I think. But he's a good left back. They're rare. They're hard to find in this league. He is pretty technical, and that's what they need. And so, I think Nashville, you saw a little bit more of a team that may be a little bit more compact, a little bit more veteran, stronger in midfield, and then they're going to fill those pieces up front where they probably will have a little bit more like quick attackers, like David Akam, who they already have, but. With Dax McCarty being their guy, kind of like one of their main pieces, you already know they're going to have more of a veteran midfield presence.
I think with Nashville, we understand where they are. I think they're about where most people thought they would be. A lot of domestic guys, they've traded international slots away. A lot of guys with experience in the league, but also, some players like Daniel Rios, like Cameron Lancaster, who have the potential to be a surprise. Miami, I think we all think we know where they're going, but they haven't done as much as maybe people expected at this point. You don't have a manager yet. You don't have the big-time splash designated player yet. Paul McDonough said they're going to have both of their designated players that are still left. They're going to have them before the season starts, and they're going to have the manager very soon. Are you kind of still waiting to see what Miami will truly be?
Yes, for sure. And when I spoke with Paul McDonough last week, for me, like his point of view, his stance about everything was that they're not rushing things. He even told me when you rush things, you make mistakes, and that was more linked to the coaching search and the fact that it is November and they don't have a manager yet, and the previous 2 expansion clubs named their manager with plenty more lead time. But what he was telling me was that they're not rushing pretty much anything, and they don't want to. They want to build the club and do it right. Now, at the same time, to your point, Jason, I agree. It's like you're still wondering, what is this team going to look like? It's not just a given that they're going to be great. Okay, like even if they bring in James Rodriguez or Edison Cavani or Luis Suarez, that doesn't automatically put you in MLS Cup. It just doesn't. Not in this league. It does take role players and contributors that you may not have expected to be that type of player for your club. I think that's what made Atlanta so successful early, is that they had guys step up that you didn't even know who they were, and you're looking at a guy like Julian Gressel, who comes out of college, comes out of the draft, starts in the first game, earns the trust of a manager like Tata Martino gradually. I wrote about that earlier this season, where I think he was the first man off the pitch, the first sub, like, I don't know, something like 20 times in a season, or I'm not sure, something crazy. Like, Tata was always kind of like, you're good, but not yet. But he worked through that, earned Rookie of the Year, and obviously now he's one of the most important players on the roster. So Inter Miami needs that type of infusion. It cannot just be star power. And I think LAFC is another example of that. Yeah, they have Carlos Vela, but they also have guys that you had to pick up, you had to find in the market and put them in the right situation. You needed the manager to be able to define that style of play. And that was something that I was pretty adamant about with Paul McDonough, is that when he said, what's more important for us, even without the coach right now, is building the club, building the culture, building the playing philosophy. And I countered with, that makes sense. I even agreed with him that you don't need the manager in place sitting next to you for the expansion draft. But the manager ultimately is going to be a big piece of the culture, a big piece of the identity, and the playing ideals of that club. So it is definitely a wait and see and how that all comes together. I agree. Yesterday I was listening. I think I was listening to Extra Time, and I kind of just, when I got home, I wasn't sure what to feel about Inter Miami. I think they still have plenty of work to do, but you have to trust the process too. I'm sure they're biding their time. And they're going to be ready. They're going to have guys that have the type of caliber of player that have probably never been in MLS, and that goes for the manager as well.
When it comes to success, and this was something that we also talked about over the past couple of days, had the feeling that if Inter Miami got everything right, they would be in the heart of the discussion in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, because of what we've seen the last couple of seasons with Atlanta United coming out of the blocks, with LAFC coming out of the blocks. Is Inter Miami the third iteration of that, do you think?
They should be. I mean, that's the thing. Whether or not they have their perfect inaugural roster, they might go start play and behind the scenes, they're like, we're not finished, we're not done. They're going to keep building, but the expectation will be there for them to be one of the top teams in the league right away. They will be expected to make the playoffs. Definitely. Like, that'll be the expectation. The pressure on Atlanta United in the first year was to make the playoffs. And there was that patch of that year where they were in trouble. And talk of, failure and being Orlando City and just being one more expansion team in the history of MLS that did make, the playoffs in their first year was a very, very real possibility. So it was huge for Atlanta United in 2017 to be in the playoffs. The players have spoken about that this season. I remember Parker's told me, when they were heading into the playoffs this year, and everyone was kind of talking about the Toronto debacle before their MLS Cup run. He went back to the 2017 playoff appearance. He said that he felt that was one of the most important, moments of the club's history was to make the playoffs. And so Inter Miami is going to have that expectation. And so they can't back into the playoffs. If they do, fine, as long as they're in it. But, whether or not the roster is where they want it to be when they kick off in March, the expectations will be incredibly high.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like the bar's been raised, and now it's even beyond just making the playoffs for Miami. I mean, LAFC and Atlanta both hosted playoff games in year one. It's to get past that, and we've been talking about it this week. When you look around the Eastern Conference and where things stand, you have Atlanta and Toronto that are coming back with most of the same faces and looking to get better. You have New York City now with questions off the field with manager. Maybe it's Van Bronckhorst, maybe not. Now sporting director is open. Claudio Reyna going to Austin. So you have questions there. But past that, Philadelphia, I mean, I don't know if I'd say rebuild, but Medunjanin and Fabian leaving. There's going to be some big new faces there. New England got better and better as the year went on. Are they going to push into that 4 spot, or is the door open if Miami gets things right to jump into that top group in the Eastern Conference? I think they can.
Yeah, I think they can, and like you said, they'll be expected to. The bar is much higher for them to just, they can't just be in the playoffs and then call it a successful year. They'll be expected to advance, and depending on who they bring in, who ultimately is on that roster, and who the manager is, that will elevate the expectations. But I think the Eastern Conference in 2020 will be stronger. I mean, there were times in 2019 where it was bad, guys. It was bad. I mean, even one of the strongest team, Atlanta United, was in last place or second to last place. Cincinnati didn't help matters at all with just being poor throughout the season. But I think that in the end of the 2019 season, like you saw teams step it up. You saw teams develop some sort of, or find themselves, like New England. You saw Philadelphia hang with everyone, maintain the strong momentum that they had. They lost it a few times throughout the year. They would kind of go back and forth, but they remained up in the top 2, top 3. So I think that makes for, you would expect the following season for those teams to be stronger. I agree. I think New England will now be, always in the conversation as long as Bruce Arena is there, and they mold that type of culture. They get the players that he wants, and the backing financially. He's going to have that team. They're going to compete. Philadelphia, I agree. I think you're not sure what happens in the midfield. They lose, Marco Fabian as well. So who do they bring in? They need attacking help. They really do. It was just, you could just see it in the playoffs that they just didn't have anything that caused Atlanta United, for one, any sort of problems in the attack.
Do you think Brendan Aronson makes that jump for them?
I'm not sure. I like him a lot. I think he's a very good player. I think he's a different type of 10 because his work rate is so high. He will run the entire pitch for you. And I like him on the ball, and his attitude is great. He's a very brave player, which is something that Jim Curtin told me when we spoke during the season, is that he's a player that, doesn't act like a teenager. And so the jump, I think it depends on what that jump is. Is it scoring goals? Well, that's tough. That's tough to ask for a young player like that. That I think he's more, he looks to get into position. He looks to kind of service and play. He's not going to be your, 10 to 15 goal scorer, in this league. But I think he should have a little bit more responsibility. If you want young players in this league to make the jump, to be considered both at the national team level and get looked at by clubs abroad, they've got to put a little bit more weight on their shoulders. I think Aronson can do that.
Outside of expansion, we've had teams who've made moves over the last couple of days, the last week or so. Have there been any other moves, whether bringing a player from outside of MLS into MLS, or a move between MLS franchises that has given you pause, that has caused your index finger to tap your chin for a couple of seconds? Has there been a move that has intrigued you for one reason or another?
You know what? Not really. I thought the Claudio Reyna news was the biggest news so far. I think that's a big one because of what it says about two clubs. You've got NYCFC. You're not sure what's going on over there. What type of influence does City Football Group truly have? Obviously, they have a lot of influence at the club, but what is it? Is it a great place to work? Are you there, and are you feeling that you can do what you want to do, or do you have that blank canvas?
Are you feeling the love?
Yeah, or are they kind of breathing down your neck and giving you different types of demands, and are they penny pinching? Are they micromanaging? So I thought, Claudio Reyna, a big name in this country, a big name in Major League Soccer. Him going to Austin, I think it says plenty about Austin as well. Well prepared already, as far as just kind of like the spine of that club, from front office to manager. And now you wonder what happened, how they build that roster, what type of influence will Claudio Reyna have? Where do they look? What is that going to look like? I think it sets up well for them to bring guys in that have that type of experience and that kind of that clout in American soccer. So as far as players, nothing yet. I think Darwin Quintero for me. Even though it was expected he was going to leave, it looked like it just wasn't, there had been kind of a falling out in Minnesota. I think he's a guy that can still be really good in this league. And I think Houston obviously got the better end of that deal. I feel like Houston got better and Minnesota just got allocation money that they have still not proven that they can spend well. I think they've let some players go that are good. Christian Ramirez, they let him go. He didn't pan out either. Darwin Quintero, guys that it looks like they just needed kind of a different setting for them to be happy. And so I think that one will hurt in the long run for Minnesota. Darwin Quintero is a different type of player. He's one of those guys that you can play throughout, the final third. Tricky, smart, creative, and I think he'll find his footing in Houston. If Houston can keep Manotas and Ellis, which I don't think that is not the expectation from the conversations I've had with colleagues and just people around the league. I still think you're either expected to make at least one of those players' dreams come true of going to Europe or even Liga MX, but just imagine if they end up playing 2020 with Manotas, Darwin Quintero and Albert Ellis, along with guys like Thomas, Martinez, just like technical players and a new manager that's going to want to, put a nice product on the field. So I think Houston, for me, has done well.
So we've talked to managers and the Gallardo potential move to Miami or Barcelona. Bayern Munich was in the mix at one point, and they still could be. It does feel like this Copa Libertadores final on Saturday could be the last major match for Gallardo at River Plate. It sounds like we might get an announcement very soon afterwards as to what's going to happen with him next. How big of a match is this for you? This is the first time that I can remember that River comes into it as a bit of an underdog with how good Flamengo has been.
Yeah. I think underdog, they're definitely not considered the favorite. So I guess how you define that.
It would be a shock if they win, but most people seem to expect Flamengo to lift the trophy.
Yeah, even the bettors, you go to betting websites, they've got Flamengo as the favorite. So starting with Gallardo, yes, it looks like this happened last season as well. Going into the final in Madrid, in Argentina and at River, no one was sure if Gallardo was coming back. He comes back, and so he comes back. He gets them to this other final. So he's playing for his 11th title as a River Plate manager. So let that sink in. And his 12th overall as a manager. He won a league title in Uruguay. So that's just insane. It is absolutely insane. And so, I think now it would make a lot more sense for him to step away. Now, what's interesting is that, he's at that point, like I said before, he can make his own decisions. They'll at River Plate, they'll gladly give him a lifetime contract, and they'll also let him walk away, and it'll be very amicable because of the relationship and the status that he has. I think they're going to unveil a statue of him. It's crazy the success that he has had. But yes, I agree. I think this is this will be their most difficult final by far. I think Flamengo is absolutely stacked. They are absolutely stacked across the field. They have, let's not forget, a very good manager, Jorge Jesus, the Portuguese manager that is very well regarded, very well respected in Europe, has had stints at both. It's crazy. He had stints at both Sporting Lisbon and Benfica. So he took, the Lisboa derby and kind of has been on both sides of that. But now he's at Flamengo, and he has a great team. It's just mixed with, some really young attacking players. and very good veteran presence. You've got, remember, Felipe Luis, the ex Atletico Madrid and Chelsea left back is there. Rafinha, the former Bayern Munich right back. Diego Alves, a very experienced goalkeeper that has been in La Liga for a lot of his career. The midfielder Diego, and these are guys that aren't always starting, by the way. He does tend to rotate a lot because he has young players off the bench that can play well. And then just up top, you've got Gabriel Barbosa, who's just a star. I mean, he's a world-renowned soccer player. Okay, he is a star player. I like the Uruguayan Arrascaeta. I think he's very good. I think he's a very good player. He can play as kind of an 8 or a 10, and he can score. And then you've got a young 21-year-old and Lucas Silva, a Brazilian that can just rip down the flank. And without forgetting their other striker, who is, I think it's Bruno Henrique, a bigger guy. They're good. They're just really good. And I think that it's two different styles too. River Plate, we know now, even if you're just getting into Copa Libertadores or Argentine football, at this point, what River is going to do. They will come, they'll play with 3 or 4 in the back. They've played with 5 at times, but it's always kind of with the intent of attacking. It reminds me of what Tata Martino called his back 5 in the 2018 playoffs, like an aggressive back 5, a team that is going to want to press throughout the pitch and get forward quickly in transition, and they have the players to do that. And then I think in Flamengo, you have a team that is a lot more compact. I think that speaks to the veteran presence of both the players and the manager. They're a team that, and especially how you play in Brazil. If you're familiar with Brazilian football, it's not just gung ho. I think people think it is. It's just people attacking. It's not. It's a lot of possession, a lot of build up play, and that's Flamengo. They have the patience to put you to sleep on the ball. Defend well, and then just hit you, whether it's a methodical build-up play or a transition. So, yeah, I think Flamengo, to your point, Jason, I think they're the favorite. I think it's just going to be a great final. And I think the fact that it's at a neutral site does help. I think it levels the playing field.
I had, and we had talked about it Monday when we were talking about juice box purveyors and things like that. Flamengo had a highest number of minus 175. They've trimmed it down to minus 137. River Plate's almost at plus 100. So I had River Plate. It was going to take longer than 90 minutes, Felipe, but I had River Plate going through 2-1 and getting the trophy. Yeah,
I mean, first of all, it's difficult to bet against Marcelo Gallardo. It is, especially in big finals. He's proven that he can do that. He can win. This is what this team is really built for. That's the mentality of the team, is to play in these big finals. It doesn't faze them. I'm on the fence. I think I'm going to wait. I need to think about this one because I mean I watched a lot more Flamengo than I thought I would this during the Copa. And every time I would just think, this team is so good, man. They're good. They're just a good team. But the one thing that made them, in my opinion, so kind of what clubs fear them, one was their home stadium. I mean, they're at the Maracanã, and it was just insane. It was just wild every time they played there. And they won't have that. I think that's big because, both fans are going to travel very well. But like I said, I just think it makes it does even the playing field a little bit. It makes both. It sets up for a cagey final because you don't have the opportunity to say, okay, we can end this in a tie and we get to go back home. So I've got to think about it, man. I've been asked a lot, and I keep saying the same thing. It's tough to bet against Gallardo and River Plate, but man, Flamengo, this feels like it's their time to win this, because Jorge Jesus, their manager, also to your point, Jason, about he's not expected to return either, so it makes it just that big of a game for them as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge one. It's Saturday. It's on BN Sports. It's on Fanatis if you have that, Fubo TV. There is a viewing party at the Brewhouse Cafe. I'll be hanging out watching the match over there. I'm looking forward to it. It's a game that feels like a big heavyweight battle because you have the team that I think Flamengo comes in 25 straight without a loss, but River has won all the trophies. And in big matches, Gallardo has come up big every single time. And, for both, it feels like it's title or bust with managers leaving, players potentially leaving. It's going to be a fascinating match. I'm really looking forward to it. You can put it on the same level as Champions League final or any other massive match around the world. So highly recommended you go out of your way to watch this one.
Yeah, and just to end, I'm going to switch gears and just quickly go back to Atlanta United, since that's kind of the news of today. I think we've talked about it. I think the options that are on the table will be the big decisions. We're hoping that Carlos Bocanegra will give us some clarity as far as what decisions were made, what decisions will be made. I think they keep things pretty close to the vest. So I don't think that he's going to go on and say we're shopping for this player or we're looking for that. But I remember last season, that was when LGP was the first time he publicly told me that he had an option, and then he's reiterated that to me, and obviously that's been public. He wants to stay. He's been open about that as well. I think he's a player that has been very important for Atlanta United. But it's interesting that his future is uncertain, and I think that to me says a lot about where the club could be going in the future. Like what type of player, what type of culture are they truly going to build moving on in 2020 under Frank de Boer? So they have the pieces too. Atlanta will have the ability to say, if they do want to shop a player, an important player like Tito Villalba or LGP, they're gonna get something out of that. So just a very interesting next few weeks and months here in Atlanta.
For sure. And that media availability will be at 3:00. Make sure you're following Felipe Carr for all the latest on Twitter, because I'm sure there will be some worthy things coming out of it.
All right. Yeah. As always, thanks for the invite, and hit me up in a couple of days. I'll let you know who I think will win Copa Libertadores. I'll give you a prediction. I hate doing that, but I'll do it.
Wait a minute, a couple of days. The game's in a couple of days, Felipe.
It's like, dude.
All right. Well, maybe right before kickoff. I don't know. Last
I was going to say,
we'll
we'll check in with you Monday for a prediction, Felipe.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then I'll be like, I told you guys.
I like it. I'm going River next year time. I think it's going to be really tight, but I'm with you. I can't go against Gallardo in a final. I just can't.
It's funny.
I'm not putting good stuff on that one. I'm not comfortable with it, but I think River gets the win.
Yeah, and this is what I've told someone before. I haven't told Paul McDonough this. I'm like, I'm a Boca guy. It's difficult for me to just be like, it's going to be River. Part of me wants to see them suffer a little bit, but it's like the conversations I've had with my dad in the last few years is that we both are Boca friendly, right, in my household.
Boca tolerant.
Yeah, but we like watching River. Like we like the football. I don't love the crest. Like I said, I like to see them kind of struggle a little bit in games, but I like to see them play. And so I'm expecting that. That's what I'm expecting to see on Saturday is the River play that we've become accustomed to. And will a guy like Juan Fernando Quintero play? He has been injured. He's coming off the knee injury. Will he be key like he was in Madrid? And so that'll be an interesting wrinkle as well. Like, does Gallardo has been saving him? They've been very careful with the Colombia number 10. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets in and can make a difference.
It's going to be a fun one. We'll compare notes maybe via text on Saturday morning. I'll get a prediction.
All right. Let's
get your prediction on Monday.
All right. Felipe, thanks for the time. Make sure you follow him, Felipe Carr, on Twitter for all the latest, because there will be things to talk about today.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks, you too. We're going to take a quick break and come back right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. SDH, November 21st. Contract option deadline day is upon us in Major League Soccer. 3 o'clock is that deadline. Atlanta United's Carlos Bocanegra, Frank DeBoer will be speaking to the media at that time about Atlanta's decisions that come down. Other teams are making them kind of as we go today. MLS has the tracker up, which is actually really useful for how teams are making these decisions. It's a great setup for it. So stay tuned to all of it. Stay tuned to your social media. There will be plenty of things going on around the league. I think there could be more trades as well as teams get kind of down to the wire on making some of these decisions. So plenty of things to dig into. It's Thursday Thoughts edition. We're taking your thoughts on Twitter at Soccer Down Here, and let's take some of those now.
Michael Bucklew, which of the top 5 U.S. team sports leagues has the most complicated rules for rosters and players? Among the crazy, franchise players, TAM, international slots, draft lotteries, drafts named after rule numbers, #Thursday Thoughts.
I don't know the NHL's setup at all, so I can't speak on that one.
Pretty plain.
I feel like the NFL might be the simplest. It's kind of easy to follow with what you know about contracts and such, and I don't think you have as many crazy things going on. Baseball has some complicated ones because of the minor league system, and I always get hung up on things like when the Braves didn't want to bring Acuna up to start the season because if he played a certain amount of time in the minors that year, they'd get an extra year of control before he went to arbitration. That kind of stuff is what's goofy about the baseball system. The NBA is very convoluted with all kinds of different categories and things, but it's all pretty publicly available, so I've been able to wrap my head around it. The MLS one, I think because they do it differently than a lot, it was what makes it more complicated. I think once you get your head around how the different allocation money works, that part's pretty easy. And the complications of allocation money, it's not as bad as you think. It's honestly just the easiest way to think about it is you have your cap for your 20 players on your senior roster. GAM just allows you to expand your cap. GAM is just cap money, and you can use it however you want. TAM is just on specific players whose contract numbers are at a certain threshold. So it's not crazy. the re-entry drafts and the rules for free agency and that kind of stuff is where it gets a little bonkers. I mean, I would tend to think that you could have your free agent threshold, which needs to come down. 28 and 8 is too much. 28 years old, 8 years of service is too much. Probably 25 and 5 or 25 and 4 or 26 and 4 or whatever. Wherever you get to, that's where I see that going. And then you don't have different stages. You don't have re-entry and waiver and et cetera, et cetera. You have a draft for players who are not free agents but are not going back to their team. Cool. You do that to try to keep the free agency pool what it is because, of course, the owners want to keep that where it is. And you go there. I think you keep that simple. You make that simpler, and that would be fine. I'd be fine if they took GAM and threw it into the cap and just said, okay, here's your cap, and GAM is just part of it now. But still allow the ability to trade cap space, essentially, because that's been very useful in MLS. I don't know. I don't know how they go forward with what the players want and what the owners want in terms of structure. I think ultimately where they both want to get, there's going to be more money put into the system. There's going to be that. But the players want to get rid of allocation money totally. And I do think there's a value in TAM. Maybe you restructure it. Maybe you change how it's used. Maybe you lump it into the designated player process. I don't know. Maybe you figure out a way to do that. I don't know. But I think there's going to be more spending, and ultimately that's the number one thing about it. And whatever your system is, because the NBA has shown this, whatever your system is if you explain it well and you make it transparent for people to understand and follow and track, people will. I mean, the NBA free agency day and the trade deadline day has become a big deal in the league. Free agency this year was massive. I mean, I'm not a diehard NBA fan, but I had it on to see what was going to happen with Kawhi Leonard and happen with all the moving pieces around the league. This was fascinating. If you have MLS get to that point where it is just transparent and easy for people to get, you'll have people who will do the work to figure it all out and explain it to everybody. You'll have the capologist websites and all that kind of stuff. Just make it accessible for them. And then it will become a bigger deal. That's what I want to see out of it. Whatever format you go with, whatever form things change in the CBA, just make it transparent and easy to follow. And people will explain it. People will figure out how to explain it.
I mean, you look at baseball, and baseball's draft is pretty plain. Rule 5 takes some explaining, but the bottom line with that is that if you pick a player and you keep him, then he has to be on the major league roster. If you don't, then you pay basically like $25,000 and he goes back to his old team. Basketball.
That seems incredibly dumb to me. I mean, I know there's a reason why it exists. I know it happens. Not just because somebody said, let's come up with a dumb rule. But that feels outdated at this point.
Well, how many people are going to baseball games these days than years previous?
Well, that has nothing to do with it. I mean, not the fact that people are not stepping away from baseball. I know
Rule 5 is not a direct correlation to attendance figures, but I think it's a symptom of it's one of the things that continues to register baseball as not advancing with the times.
It's low on that list because it's inconsequential for the most part. I mean, when was the last time a Rule 5 drafted player actually truly mattered in a World Series winning team or in a
Kerry Lightberg?
It's a long time ago because I remember that name. It's just a dumb thing. I don't know the rest. Like, I don't get the baseball side of it with a cap, but not really. Like, that part I don't understand. I mean, a salary cap that's not a salary cap, why do you have a salary cap?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, basketball, you made the point that with all of their salary rules, at least what they do is they explain them and have them out there. And when it comes to free agency, you have all these percentages, but you have the rights holders, the networks, they sit there and it's like, okay, trade tracker, plug in players and see if the trade works. Having those kinds of things help you at least navigate some of the confusion that you might have. And when it comes to draft, you can only have players that are of a certain age, which I also think is antiquated, but I also understand it.
That's
Football
different. Yeah, that's a different conversation about that part, because that's not like caps and contract situations. Push that to the side for a second. The other thing about basketball, and you mentioned it with the rights holders, and that's really important, is you're making it clear to people who cover your league how this works. And you're not having misinformation. I mean, go back to the expansion draft. Like, league digital employees put information out there that was ultimately proven incorrect and misled everyone who was trying to talk about who was protected, who was not going to be protected. That wouldn't happen in another sport, because you'd make sure that it's clear so people who are out there wanting to talk about it will understand it. Look, I'm not going to stop talking about it because I was confused by it, but if you are a mainstream outlet and you decided to jump in and try to cover that, when you get wrong information, you're going to get angry about it. And you're going to say, You know what? I'm not going to put the time into this in the future. I'll just wait till it's done. And MLS needs the conversation leading up to it, because that's where the NBA has continued to grow for me. It's not just that you've got, players that are among the best the game has ever seen. It's not just that you've got some of these trades and some of these moves. It's the build-up to them. The whole discussion about where Kawhi would go and in what that would do to other teams and in who would follow and in what hole that opened up over here. And then, okay, now you've got some of the lower contract guys who want to go play for a winner. How are they going to fit in here? What could the Lakers do in response? Yada, yada, yada. That was what grabbed my attention. And in MLS, it feels like at times they try really hard to stamp that part down. And the way you get there is being transparent in what your rules are. I don't care how complicated they are, because NBAs are complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, mid-level exceptions and
veterans exceptions
and all that kind of stuff. It's complicated. You have a harder cap, but you have ways around it. It's difficult to understand, but if you are compelled to learn it and you have people who can explain it properly, it's accessible to your everyday fan. And the NBA and the conversation around the opening of free agency has grown and grown and grown. I felt like this was the biggest year yet, because they understand that conversation, that debate, is part of it. You can't just wait and say, okay, this is what's available, here, done. Have the conversation around it more, so we're sitting here looking at this like, all right, what is Atlanta United going to do? What are the Chicago Fire going to do? How are they going to handle this? And there's so much unknown that it's really hard to have an accurate conversation about it. We're debating the possibilities of what they can do more so than how are they going to replace player X? How can they keep player Y? We need more of that part, because that's what's compelling to fans.
Patrick Sullivan is apologizing that he missed the Wild Heaven get-together, but he also enjoyed the 89 USMNT anniversary and Italian 90 World Cup discussion. He said that World Cup was a high watermark in the golden age of bad soccer hair.
There was a lot of bad hair. You had at that time, flat top mullet that was a thing. And maybe it was a jersey thing, because it felt like it was the Jersey guys in the national team who had it. Miola and Harks had some just awful hair there for a while. with like a kind of longish, spiky flat top with the mullet long in the back too. That was just wow, incredible, absolutely incredible. But welcome to 1989 and welcome to 1990. That's what was going on at that time.
Tafka had a couple of things. Tafka, first question from him, is there no formal college super draft this year or starting next year?
This year. They're not doing it at the United Soccer Coaches Convention. Now, they haven't said what the process will be, but they're not doing it at the convention like they've done in the past.
And then for discussion, the little brother, in quotes, setup of both New York Red Bulls and NYCFC, i.e. Red Bulls and CFG, is seemingly a major limitation on the club, as MLS clubs' needs are secondary to other clubs and the organization in general. Is there anything that can improve the issue? And he says that CFG is the far worse culprit. Negatives: Adams' lack of market value sale, forced Pirlo, Lampard debacle, non-market value of Harrison, plug-and-pluck Vieira, plug-and-pluck Tarrant. Obviously, Reyna had enough. The money outlay doesn't seem to match the limitations.
Well, I think you're jumping to a conclusion about Reyna having enough. And until he says something, going to hold off on jumping to that conclusion. And what was the first sentence? Go back to that real quick.
The little brother, in quotes, setup of both Red Bulls and NYCFC, i.e. Red Bulls and CFG, is seemingly a major limitation on the club, as the MLS club's needs are secondary to other clubs and the organization in general.
I have to disagree with that because it's not a major limitation because these teams have been successful. I mean, have they won MLS Cup? No, but only one team does that. I don't think every team in the league that doesn't do that is a failure, is a major limitation. Let's look at New York City and what they've done in the time that they've been in the league. You're looking at in the league ranking, so the overall table, the last 4 years, 4th, 2nd, 7th, 2nd. They've been good. They've been really good. They haven't gotten it done in the playoffs, but they've been really good. Goal differentials of 13, 14, 21. Very, very good. Red Bulls have won 3 supporter shields in the last 7 years. Very good. They have to do business differently, and that is a limitation. It's not a completely game-breaking limitation because the Red Bulls and NYC have both found ways to be successful. The Red Bulls have developed a ton of talent on their own. NYC has done a pretty good job with their signings. I mean, this year, I think especially, this was their best year. It was their best point total year, 64 points. I thought it was their best team in the way that they played. And they didn't go out and go sign the guys that they started with, the Lampards, the Pirlos. Villa was successful. Leave him out because you're talking about a guy who in 4 years scored 18 goals, 23 goals, 22 goals, and 14 goals. That's a success. I don't care that he was a big success before he came. That's a great signing. It's more than Zlatan did in 4 years because Zlatan didn't last 4 years. Anyway, NYC has a different makeup than the others. They failed in year 1, and I think there was too much meddling from the front office on not giving Jason Christ what he wanted. Patrick Vieira got what he wanted. Dome Tarrant eventually got what he wanted. He wasn't happy in the way he got it. You've had to change managers. You're going to have turnover in those teams because, yes, they are secondary. From the Red Bull side, when a player like Tyler Adams comes through and he is wanted by Salzburg or Leipzig, well, they're going to move that way. Manager, same thing, Jesse Marsch. They don't want Aaron Long, so now they're going to sell him out elsewhere. I think more MLS clubs need to develop talent and move it on at the right time. So the Red Bull's doing that. That's not about Red Bull. I think that's good. Now, could they have gotten more for Tyler Adams on the open market? It's debatable. I don't know. I don't know if they would have or not. It's hard to judge. It's hard to judge what that open market is because I think we get so many conflicting reports on the valuation of players in MLS and the valuation of American players specifically as to what you could have truly gotten for Tyler Adams if you had shopped him to anybody in the world. Don't know if it would have been a whole lot more than they got to send him in-house in the Red Bull organization. We haven't seen that as much from NYC, to be honest. I mean, look at, for example, Gio Reyna, Claudio's son, part of the New York City Academy. They didn't sign him to a New York City deal. He went to Dortmund for nothing. So, and if anything, I think City Football Group has helped NYC because they took Jack Harrison off the books and put more money into it than Jack Harrison would have gotten on the open market. They've sent players far more than Red Bull has, like Yangel Herrera, for example, to play in New York and benefit the New York team. I think they're different, but I don't think they're major limitations. I truly don't. I just think they have to think differently, and they have to, they do have different things hanging over them. And now we'll see what City Football Group does. Do they go and say, well, we've tried to have somebody completely independent from outside CFG running the team, and they've been successful. Do we want to continue that? Somebody who knows the American market, or do we want to put a CFG person in there? That's the question for me. Van Bronckhorst is going to be a CFG manager. They made that decision, I think, with Toronto, that they wanted to build a style of play that was comparable to what's going on in Manchester. So you bring Pep Guardiola's assistant, and there you go. Red Bull has tried to build that style of play by instilling it into the managers in place in New York. First with Jesse Marsh, now with Chris Armas, and John Wolenick with the twos. It's you play the Red Bull way. City Football Group, I think, is still building that side. So both of them are different in the way that their parent organization works, but both of them have benefited from being part of it, and I don't think it's been as big of a limitation as you think. I think it's just a different animal. And if you're going to go into that as an executive, as a coach, you have to know what you're getting into. And it's not for everybody. But I don't think it's an awful thing either. I really don't.
Last thing on the Twitters before folks can send in more stuff to talk about on the Twitters. I know that February 29th, it's already been announced that Atlanta United is heading to Nashville for their home opener, for their MLS opener. And I think that Atlanta is also heading to Chicago for their Soldier Field opener. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, that was announced a long time ago.
Stephen Joyce says February 29th will be the inaugural Sweet Tea Cup in Nashville, although meet and 3 could work.
Yes, if you were listening to Stoppage Time yesterday, you would know what that tweet was talking about. Otherwise, you're probably like, what in the world is John saying this time? So there was a conversation about what this derby will be called, what this rivalry will be called, and Curtis from Footy Mob had the idea of the meet and 3, the meet and 3 cup. Okay, I can work with this. Sweet tea being in the mix somewhere, I'm cool with that. Maybe Charlotte has to get involved to include the sweet tea element. So I don't know what it ends up being called, but I think Nashville, Atlanta will have some kind of fun name to it. Atlanta, Orlando never got to that point. Atlanta doesn't have a named rivalry with anybody. There's not like something that, this is what it's called. You don't have that yet. Maybe Nashville's the first one to get that. And if it's the meet and 3, if it's the sweet tea, whatever, something is going to factor in and I think stick with it because you're going to have so many fans back and forth traveling for those games. And that's why they got to be in the same conference and they got to play home and away every year. And it needs to be a big deal because it has that kind of potential.
Do we know when the rest of the 2020 schedule is going to be released?
Probably same as it always is. The home openers are generally announced before Christmas, and then the rest of the schedule comes out at the beginning of January. It's been earlier and earlier, but that's been the model in recent years. So right after the first of the year, I would expect the whole schedule to come out. But I think Atlanta's home opener could be announced anytime, but definitely before Christmas.
Okay, just checking. So if you're looking to send us Twitter stuff for Thursday Thoughts, use the hashtag Thursday Thoughts. We've got a half hour at least remaining, depending on what else everybody wants to talk about. So send in your Thursday thoughts, and we'll talk about it.
And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky and Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, November 21st. Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. We've got some more tweets we'll be getting into. A really good thread just popped up on Reddit in the NYC subreddit because I had the exact same reaction to this. I saw a rumor out of Chile that Claudio Bravo was tempted by a move to MLS to see out his career, and there were offers to move there, and one was New York City have proposed a 4-year deal just because he's at Manchester City. No, they haven't. Sean Johnson, he's there. He's been really good.
I've heard he's been okay.
Goalkeeper. No, and no, and no. And the title of the post on Reddit was Reason 1,678,987 Why British Soccer Transfer Rumors Are Stupid. I would take the British out of it and just say reason 7,948,812 that transfer rumors are ridiculous. That is what I would say, because it's not just British. It is everywhere. South America gets stupid with it. But this is one, like, literally, you are trying to make something up, because if you know anything about New York City and that team, goalkeeper is the last place they are trying to add a player from Manchester City in. It makes no sense. So, other rumors that maybe make a little more sense. We'll talk about those real quick. Peruvian winger Kevin Quevedo, who has been linked to MLS before. He's 22 years old. He's been linked to Minnesota. He's been linked to New York City. This is from Fox Deportes Radio in Peru. Vancouver could be in the mix as well, because Marc Dos Santos has talked about scouting a Peruvian winger. So, try to connect the dots. Maybe that one makes a little bit of sense. One rumor that has been squashed is Garth Lagerwey leaving Seattle and going to Chicago. I have no idea where this started. It kept getting some traction, and I'm looking to see where it could have started from, and it was basically trying to say that, one, Garth Lagerwey's from Chicago, or from the Chicago area, And he said like he'd like to be more involved in things. I think the business side of a club at some point. So people started to say, "Oh, he wants to go to Chicago." Well, Chicago, one, has somebody in that role in Nelson Rodriguez, and two, Garth Lagerwey's been really successful and done very well and seemingly very happy in Seattle. So, yeah, he kind of squashed that one quickly during the end of the season press conference yesterday. He did say that Emmanuel Cecchini, the Argentine midfielder who came in on loan from Malaga in August, he only played 4 times. He only started 1 game, and they're saying he might not come back. It might not have worked out at all. So does he go back to Malaga? Does he go elsewhere? We'll see, but it just, didn't really stick. Sporting Kansas City could be the team that gets Puebla's Canadian national team forward Lucas Cavallini. That's according to TUDN. Transfer fee reportedly in the $7 to $8 million range. Sounds like Puebla needs to sell some players, and Cavallini's the guy who's getting the most interest, and Sporting has been looking for a number 9 for over 2 years now, since they traded Dom Dwyer for a boatload of allocation money. And Cavallini would be a guy that would, I think, 100% fit with what Peter Vermes wants, and he would be worth that kind of money. It would make a lot of sense. Another rumor that was debunked was Kyle Larin to Montreal. Paul Tenorio spoke to Larin's agent and said that Larin is happy working his way up through the European leagues. He's actually in Belgium. I'd forgotten he'd moved to Belgium from Turkey. So he is happy where he's at. So it doesn't sound like he's headed to Montreal anytime soon. That's your rumor roundup for today. And Claudio Bravo, rumor out of Chile, did not make the roundup because it was stupid.
I was going to say how many O's in stupid.
Just stupid.
Oh, and Jarrett, by the way, in addition to giving us a bunch of Rule 5 guys that were successful in Major League Baseball.
Okay, hold on. A bunch of Rule 5. How long has the Rule 5 draft been going on?
Efforting.
That's okay. I don't need an exact year. The fact that the most famous Rule 5 draftee is Roberto Clemente should give you an idea that the Rule 5 draft has been going on for 50-plus years. And 6 guys. And Clemente is the only one that is, like, massive. The Rule 5 thing is stupid. And it was done so, as Jarrett says, teams couldn't stockpile players in the minors, and no other
Hack
league
Wilson
has
was
this
a
kind
Rule
of system.
5 draftee.
What's that?
Hack Wilson was one of 3 Hall of Famers who was a Rule 5
Okay, so
draftee.
100 years. 3 Hall of Famers in 100 years have went through this process. I think you can say it's stupid. It's stupid. That's the take
notables
on the Rule 5 draft. Hello, baseball folks. It's a stupid rule. Get rid of it.
And Jarrett has come up with a name for the rivalry between Atlanta and Orlando. He said it already has a name.
No. It does not have a name, first off.
Father's Day.
Orlando people would disagree with that name for the rivalry. Usually, rivalry names are something that both sides embrace.
Yes.
But
the
Jarrett's
Egg
not
Bowl,
wrong, for example.
Yeah.
Nobody is angry about the Egg Bowl on either side. One side would be angry about calling it the Father's Day rivalry. So no, that's not what it's
the Old
called.
Oaken Bucket.
Which teams play for a bucket?
I think it's Minnesota and Iowa.
I don't know. You're the college football guy.
I think that's that one, or it's Indiana and somebody. I get them all confused because there's so many in the Big Ten. Anyway, the Governor's Victory Bells, Penn State, Minnesota. The Heartland Trophies, Iowa, Wisconsin.
The
Battle of the
Heartland
Bricks
Trophy. What is on said trophy?
I don't know. Maybe it's a heart. I have no idea.
I'm assuming it's not. That would be really silly.
In
Probably
in
just a trophy.
lower divisions, you've got the Bronze Turkey Trophy in Illinois with 2 schools.
When you're getting into the lower divisions of college football, then we could go on to some crazy ones. I mean, there's plenty of other big ones to go with.
Yes.
And then plenty of other rivalries that don't have a trophy. Like, just because it's got a name doesn't mean it has to have something attached to it. The
Georgia,
world's
Florida.
largest cocktail party you're not passing a cocktail back and forth. Everybody already drank them before the game started.
Exactly.
So, just saying. There has not a name. So, okay, the rivalries with names in MLS. You have the Cascadia Cup with Vancouver and Portland and
Vancouver.
Seattle. Vancouver and Portland and Seattle. You have El Tráfico with the two Los Angeles teams, and that seems to stick for some stupid reason. You have the Cali Classico with the Galaxy and San Jose.
Right.
You have the Atlantic Cup with the Red Bulls and DC, and that's one of the oldest. You have the Brimstone Cup between Chicago and Dallas, and that has kind of fallen off a little bit in terms of being talked about. The Hudson River Derby in New York with NYC and Red Bulls. I don't know if any of the Philly games really have a name to it.
What is
For
Dallas
a while,
and Houston?
I think it's just the Texas Derby. I don't know if there's really a name to it. For a while, Columbus and Toronto, they called it the Trillium Cup, and it was something about something shared between the two cities. I don't remember the details on that. I don't know if
Hell
that's
is real.
Stuck. Yes, the rivalry named after a billboard. Yes, you have that. Atlanta doesn't have any of those yet. I think Nashville will be the one that has a name to it. I just don't know what that name's going to be.
Jared also maintains that if Orlando doesn't like Father's Day, they should do something about it.
That's not how it works, Jarrett. We all know this.
Ricky Ricardo asks, since there have been 29 teams announced in MLS, how do you project the league will be structured as far as teams in East and West? Teams in question: Chicago, Nashville, St. Louis, Houston, maybe. Hashtag Tuesday thoughts on a Thursday.
We'll play the speculation game. Thursday has thoughts, too. It doesn't have to be Tuesday thoughts on a Thursday. So it would be this year, if I'm drawing it, Chicago goes to the West, Miami and Nashville come into the East. That's simple. Very easy. So, and this is not getting into the divisions yet, because I think you're probably going to have to do that for scheduling purposes eventually, but let's leave that to the side for a second. Let's just talk East and West. So, Chicago goes to the West, your two teams come into the East, you're on 13 and 13. You have Austin coming in 2021, and right now they are flying solo. They would go into the West. You have St. Louis and Sacramento coming in, and they would both go to the West. And now things get complicated, because 13 and 13 plus 3, that is 16 and 13. If you add Team 30, and if Charlotte is at the front of the line right now, let's say that they get it. All right. So they go into the East. That's 16 and 14 in terms of the two conference structure. Do you at 30 go to 10 and 10 and 10? I think it's very possible in three conferences. Or do you go to divisions within the conferences, and they'd have to be uneven because you'd be at
8 and 7.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to move somebody back from the West to the East. Maybe Chicago comes back. Maybe Chicago bounces back and forth for a little while. I don't know. It's going to be tricky. I mean, I hope that the plan is, and I would like to think that this has already been discussed. What happens, because everybody's coming in except for one, and you have, I think, 3 legitimate options based off what's been said. So I think you should be able to have, like, all right, this is what it would look like this year. This is what it would look like this year if Team 30 comes in 21 and it is X. Okay, this is what it looks like if they don't come in 21 and it's Team X, and then so on and so forth. You should be able to have this drawn up now. I mean, the things that we don't know, which is what makes it difficult, we don't know if they are committed to playing 34 games forever. We don't know if they would say, well, we've got this competition coming up with Liga MX, and we want to do more of that. So we will go to 32 games, for example, and then everybody's going to play minimum of 3 games in a group with Mexican teams involved in a expanded Leagues Cup, blah, 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 Fantasyland, whatever. We don't know that type of stuff. But I think you're going to have to probably, from the way the current schedule is structured, go to 10 and 10 and 10 as opposed to getting to 30 and moving a team in the West like Chicago back to the East. I think you got to go 10, 10, 10 to determine it. And then the question is playoffs and how you do playoffs. I think you do it like they did before when they had 3 conferences, because MLS has had 3 conferences in the past. It's not East versus West. It is seeded. It's just a seeded bracket based off the top 14 teams right now that get in. So your conference winners would automatically get in, but then past that, it's just your best teams that qualify. And I think that's where they would go with it. The conferences would just be primarily for scheduling purposes.
And I know that if Chicago is bounced back and forth multiple times, worse than the Brewers and the Astros, I think that they might have some issues with it. So
I don't think it's the same thing. No, I don't think it's the same thing like that, though. I mean, you're talking about a big scheduling difference with who you're playing. Brewers and Astros changed leagues. Like that's a whole different world than changing conferences, where it's expected that in MLS you're still going to play everybody every season. So it's not like you're not going to see teams that you used to see. It's not nearly as disruptive as it would be. But I think they go to 3 conferences at that point for scheduling purposes anyway. So I don't think it comes into play.
And then you go 1, 2, 3 with your conference champs, obviously by points, and then seed 4 through 14.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the bracket's not conference specific. Then it's just seeded, and your conference winners go in, and your top 2 conference winners get the top 2 seeds, and they get buys in the first round if you keep the same format, and you just go from there. And 3 would be in the side of the bracket with 2, and then the best overall team would be in the other side of the bracket with the number 1 seed, and there you go.
We have another suggestion for the name of the rivalry. And a couple days ago, it was put out there, can the rivalry trophy be the Appalachian Grail? Tafka says that's the best he's seen. It allows for more than just Nashville and Atlanta.
Who else would it allow for? Because who else would actually who else would want to be involved in that?
I guess, Charlotte maybe? If you're assuming Charlotte comes online?
Would Charlotte be Appalachian? Would that qualify?
That's a Tafka question. He says it allows for more than...
I don't think of Charlotte as Appalachian, but that could just be me.
Yeah, I don't either. Tri-Cities Otters, maybe?
Yeah, they're not coming to MLS, John.
Open Cup.
There's only one rivalry I know of that has a name to it, between an MLS team and a lower division team because of Open Cup, and it's the Coffee Pot Cup between DC and Charleston.
I did not know that one.
Yeah, DC lost to Charleston in the Open Cup, and players got mad and smashed up the locker room, and they broke a coffee pot, and it became a thing. They haven't played in a long time, so that's why it's not really talked about much anymore. But yeah, there was a coffee pot trophy, in air quotes, attached to it for a while.
Tafka says when you hit more than 34 teams in MLS, he'd like to see conferences removed, removing geography, and allow placement based on prior season performance. This sounds like an opus.
Happening, Tafka, I know you're very creative, and I love the creativity, but no league in the world in any structure in any sport has a format like that. And if MLS is going away from is moving towards simplifying things and thinking that a 2-leg playoff format is too complicated for people, they're definitely not doing that. And I do think that the travel factor for conferences and scheduling is a key element. So it's not just going to be random placement based off previous performance. Now, if you're talking about a 1 and 2 level, that's a different conversation.
Yes.
That's
what it looks like.
Well, that's not the same conversation.
In an MLS 1 and MLS 2, the conferences play an equal home and away schedule. MLS 1 gets 3/4 of the playoff spots. MLS 2 gets the others, and you have pro rel based on
completely whole nother world of weirdness that I just don't think you can explain. I mean, that's the problem, and that's the thing. And when you come up with it, like, we can come up with great ideas that would be really interesting to us. Go try to explain that one on SportsCenter. Go try to explain that playoff race. It's just too much. It's too difficult. And I think he's trying too hard to solve something that isn't that complicated. Once you get to 30, which is where they're looking at right now, MLS has to make a decision on, are they going to stay there or are they going to expand? If they decide to expand, are you going to expand by 2 or 4 and keep the same structure? Or are you going to expand by, and honestly, I think when you get past 2, you're probably talking about, all right, are we going to do a MLS 1 and 2 that are a first division in our league and a second division, and do that model that happens in other countries around the world? This would be a closed promotion relegation system in Major League Soccer between their divisions, and other countries have talked about that. I don't think the Premier League has ever really had that conversation. I don't think they'd ever get there with the FA and just the history of it. I know Scotland has had that conversation about, and Jarrett would probably be able to chime in on this. I don't know if truly it's like that now with the Scottish Championship and the Scottish Premier League, if they are all the same business structure. Because the Premier League broke away from the English Football League because they wanted more control over things. MLS just started that way and didn't have the relegation aspect to it because they didn't have to, because they started with, we want more control over things. I don't know. I think at times, instead of trying to come up with the realistic ways to move forward, we think a little too hard on being creative, and to the point that it's too confusing to people. And just like we talked about with the contract structure and salary cap structure and all of that, you know, there is a need for simplicity, and there is a need for things that are easy to replicate and also easy to explain to new fans, you know, other sports fans, and get them on board with it and understand the drama behind it. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a simple solution. I think you get to 30 and you go in 10-team conferences, and you do that for scheduling purposes, because I think MLS has made the decision, and I'm cool with it at this point. You're not going to have a true, like, home and away championship. You're not going to play everybody home and away. It's not going to be a truly balanced schedule. Okay. So if you're okay with that, then you're going to create whatever structure makes sense to protect rivalries, because however you feel about them, whether you think they're manufactured or not, they're important because they do generate interest. And you have those spikes of interest during the season when Seattle-Portland comes around, when Vancouver-Portland comes around, when El Tráfico comes around, when Atlanta-Orlando comes around, when Atlanta-Red Bulls comes around. Rivalries, however they're generated, are very important. And you want to protect them wherever possible. Not always possible when rivalries develop organically, but they're very important to protect. So I think creating more complicated systems is more harm than good.
Jared has also posted a map of the Appalachian Trail.
Technically, yeah, nobody thinks about that way, though.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to... If you said, because the Appalachian Trail is very close to New York, if you said, well, New York City, they're close to the Appalachian Trails, they're part of this, people would throw it at you. It's not going to work. And it's not that close to Nashville either, truly. So, yeah, that doesn't work. Sorry. I vote against it.
The Vancouver Whitecaps have announced that Daniil Henry is getting my club right here. That the transfer to the K1 club, Suwon Samsung Blue Wings, has checked off. So
yeah,
he's now over there.
We talked about that. It was done that he was going to an Asian Champions League team. Just didn't know the team until last night. So he is headed to Korea, and Vancouver made some money on the deal. So now we see what they do with it. Tab Ramos, speaking to MLSsoccer.com, says he is now, of course, since he traded Joe Willis, targeting a goalkeeper and midfield help on their off-season wish list.
And we are also awaiting a press conference in Chattanooga. It's supposed to happen at the top of the hour. And we will have the Chattanooga Red Wolves general manager, Sean McDaniel, for a 1v1 later this afternoon that we will turn.
Yeah, interested to see what the press conference is all about. The Red Wolves finished their first year. They're building a stadium. They're doing all kinds of things in the area, but what could this press conference be about? I don't know. I'm intrigued. And you know, the Chattanooga soccer wars with a Z continue on as Chattanooga FC has made some big moves. I like their new GM hire. I want to see NASA and what that ends up being, because it's been a rocky road in their first showcase season. I'm still, and again, it gets back to formats. I'm still massively confused on NISA and what kind of championship structure they're having and what it is and how it's going. I don't know, because it's just too complicated. The New York Cosmos will be joining the NISA, and that is an interesting move across the board, because alongside adding teams like the Cosmos, Chattanooga, Detroit, the launch of the Oakland Roots, which has been very, very fun to see, and I love what they're doing from a branding perspective. You've had the Philadelphia Fury say that everything's fine and then pull out after their first game gets canceled. You've had Atlanta SC move venues multiple times, and now Nipun Chopra of Sock Takes has reported that players have not been paid fully on contracts, and some contracts were for 3 months. So it's some really good and some really bad when it comes to the NISA. And I hope that it can find stability at whatever level it is. If it is a closer level to the amateur teams, that a lot of these teams that have jumped up are amateur, if it's closer to that, but it's stable, cool. If it's higher level, like the Cosmos, I think, aspire to be, like Chattanooga and Detroit have shown that they can potentially be, cool. Stability is the number one thing, and sustainability. It's the number one thing with that league, and I really hope they could find it. But for as many good things that have come out of it in its first year, there's been those black eyes that are an issue as well. And I hope that they can start to limit those going forward.
There's some cool news out of San Diego with the USL Championship team.
Yes, there is. Landon Donovan is the manager. We've talked about that. Caitlin Murray at Yahoo Sports has a piece about Donovan's staff. First, he's had a consultant in Shannon McMillan, longtime U.S. Women's National Team veteran. And his first assistant coach that he's hired is Carrie Taylor. Taylor is going to be, unless there's another change in the league this year, she will be the only woman working on the technical staff of a USL Championship team in 2020. She's been involved in video analysis so far, helping San Diego Loyal SC profile upcoming opponents. In training sessions, Donovan says that each coach on staff will take a line of the field, and Taylor will work with players directly. She's coached men before. She helped launch the men's team at Mount St. Joseph University in Ohio. She has an A license. She has won championships at all levels. It's a very cool outside-the-box thing, and it doesn't feel like a gimmick. And that's the number one element of it. I don't think Donovan works that way. I think he does like to challenge the norms. I think he likes to push the envelope, but I don't think he looks at it as being different just to be different. I think he wants to do something that has an impact. And this is the kind of move that can. I think it's a great move, and when you get to a point where people are measured by their production, that'll be great, because this is one of those things that shouldn't be a story, because how many assistant coaches do we really talk about on a regular basis and what they do? But it's a very cool move for Donovan to make, and I hope it's successful.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of why I was out of town on Tuesday for doing the high school football stuff. And it's a story in Lincolnton, at Lincoln County, where they have 3 girl kickers, 2 place kickers and a punter. And I said in my stand-up, and the piece will be out in the next couple of weeks, that you really just want to get to the point where you're talking about a team that has kickers who are girls instead of it being a girl kicker, And this is, for me, it was along those same kind of lines. It's like you just want to get to talking about coaches, regardless of what they look like. They're a good coach, they're a good coach. And there's a reason that they're promoted. It's because they're good at what they do and not because of any other factor.
Yeah, we'll see when that happens. I mean, you got to start somewhere. So I'm excited that Landon Donovan is not approaching this in a vanilla sort of way. He is a manager who will be going through his coaching courses as well. Taylor has an A license. Donovan does not. I like that he is just looking at things a little differently, and I'm really curious to see where things go at San Diego. I'm not a fan of the name. You still got to sell me on that one.
No. Yeah.
But I like what they're doing in building the club, and I think they can be successful in the USL Championship in a big way.
Joe Bost, under the wire, his biggest thought / concern today is about Tito Villalba, and he wanted to know what our thoughts were about Tito and his possible futures, whether it's locally or not.
I don't know. I'd be surprised unless the option number is just exorbitant, and also if there just wasn't interest. I'd be surprised if the option isn't picked up. Could he be traded? Sure. I think everything's on the table right now, because you've got to make decisions for the long-term health of the team. And, last year, Tito Villalba did not play much, and when he did not play like a player who was a starter. And the amount of money he was on makes that a situation that you can't go forward with for very long. It just adds up. So we'll see. I think he's a player who can be very successful in this league because he has. I think he's a player who needs to play to get back fully healthy. Injuries have really slowed him down and been a huge issue for him. So I hope that wherever he is, whether it's in Atlanta or not, that he gets a chance to play, because that's the only way we're going to see the Tito Villalba that we saw in 2017, where he was one of the best players in Major League Soccer. It's the only way we're going to get to see the Tito that San Lorenzo saw on the way to a Copa Libertadores title. It's tough because I think as fans, you're not thinking about the business side of it, and the club can't get caught up in the emotion side of it. So sometimes those things don't always align, and it can be very difficult. That could happen here. Don't know, because there hasn't been a lot of talk about what his contract status is. I think it was back in September that in a rundown of the roster, Doug Robertson had that he was on an option for this year. I'm not 100% sure that's the case, because I haven't seen it really talked about much. So stay tuned on that. Sporting Kansas City made their announcement on their moves. We will get that for you while we're still talking. Declined options on Seth Sinovic, Benny Feilhaber, Gideon Zalalem, Christian Nemeth, Nico Hustler, and Rodney Wallace are out of contract. So, Feilhaber, central midfielder, Senovic, left back, Wallace, left back / left wing, are all eligible for free agency. The way they put it, and I'll try to make sense of this. So this is what the sentence says from Sporting Kansas City. Feilhaber, Senovic, and Wallace are eligible for free agency, which begins Monday at 2 p.m. Central, and for the MLS reentry draft, with Stage 1 set for November 26th and Stage 2 on December 3rd. Nemeth and Hostler are also eligible for the reentry process, while Zelalem is eligible for the end-of-the-year waivers process that starts on Monday at 2 p.m. Central. So, Feilhaber, Senovic, and Wallace can elect to become free agents. They could also elect to go into the reentry draft, although that doesn't really make sense for them as players. That's why it's worded like this. They're going to want to be free agents, so they can pick where they go. When you look at Nemeth and Hostler, they are not eligible to be free agents. They are going into the reentry draft, and Zelalem is going through the waivers process. He is not eligible for the reentry draft. I hope that makes sense. It's back to just how confusing things can get at times. So, two free agents that I think are definitely going to have a market in Senovic and Wallace. Feilhaber could. I think the question about Feilhaber is just how much does he have left? And LAFC decided that he didn't have much left and moved him to Colorado. He wasn't playing in Colorado. He went to Kansas City, where he'd been before, and got to play when they had a bunch of injuries. And I think he played well. I think he's still a valuable piece, but I don't think he's a piece you can count on to start 30 games. I think he's a central midfielder that a team could look at to start 15 and come off the bench in others. And if he's willing to take that on in the right spot, he could be a valuable free agent pickup. I think Senovic and Wallace are two guys who can start. Wallace is probably a little more in demand, but he's had injuries that have slowed him down, and maybe there's question marks there. Seth Senovic is a very solid left back. He's not spectacular. He's not going to be one that makes a bunch of highlight reels, but he is a very solid left back, and for a team that has a hole in that position, he would be a great pickup. So that's Kansas City's announcement. More will be coming. Official now, Claudio Reyna leaving New York City, going to Austin. David Lee has been promoted as the sporting director at New York City. So Lee was the technical director. Now he is the sporting director. Reyna said, "I've decided to accept the exciting opportunity to once again be part of an expansion club. This has been an extremely difficult decision for me and my family. NYCFC is such a special place, and being sporting director of this great club has been one of the most enjoyable and proud moments in my career." So, and Reyna also said, "I couldn't be happier for David Lee to take over the position of sporting director. David and I have worked hand in hand over the last 6 years, and he is without doubt one of the most talented and well-respected executives in the league." So you get continuity with NYCFC, and that was the question I had was, are they going to bring in somebody from CFG, from Manchester, to run it, or is there somebody in place? And there was somebody in place in David Lee, who'd been the technical director. And it seems like a very amicable parting of the ways with Reyna and NYC. Doesn't seem like friction in any way. And you get that continuity with Lee being there, next to Claudio Reyna from day one. So things should change things should move forward as they have been with New York City. I don't expect any massive changes there.
And we have the news out of Chattanooga.
And what is it?
It is a new technical director and head coach replacing Tim Hankinson. Jimmy Obleda comes from Canyon Hills Soccer Association in Southern California. Was the head coach at Santiago Canyon College for their men's soccer program. And so he now goes from one coast to the other to take over for Tim Hankinson. His career includes coaching Deportivo Chorus, USA, in the NPSL. So new head coach and technical director in Chattanooga for the Red Wolves.
Okay. that's the announcement. We'll hear more from Sean McDaniel later today on a 1v1. We'll get that posted up late in the afternoon, hopefully. And we'll keep you posted on all the other news that's going to pop up around the country. It's not even just MLS that's making news right now. It's going to be everything. So we'll be back tomorrow with Soccer Down here at 9 a.m. Plenty of things to talk about. We will be very active on the Twitters today at Longshoe, at OSG Nelson, at Soccer Down here with all of the latest as options get picked up, options get declined, players being out of contract are announced, and we'll have a much bigger picture of who could be available to Atlanta United and everybody else starting on Monday with the waiver process. So until then, mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.